The sun was sinking behind the hills of Canaan when two strangers walked through the gates of Sodom. The city was wealthy, fortified, and famous, a hub of trade and agriculture on the well-watered plain of the Jordan. Lot, Abraham's nephew, sat at the city gate, the place where elders conducted business and rendered judgment. When the strangers appeared, he rose immediately and bowed with his face to the ground. Lot insisted they stay under his roof. He prepared a feast. He gave them bread and wine. But before they could sleep, the men of Sodom, young and old, every man from every quarter of the city, surrounded the house. They demanded Lot send out the visitors so they could assault them. The roar of the mob pressed against the walls. Lot stepped outside and shut the door behind him, offering his own daughters in their place. The strangers pulled Lot back inside and struck the mob blind. Every man at the door, young and old, groped helplessly at the walls, unable to find the entrance. And then the visitors revealed who they were. They were not travelers. They were messengers of destruction. They told Lot to gather his family and flee, because the city was about to be erased from the earth. Escape for your life. Do not look behind you. Do not stop anywhere in the valley. Lot hesitated. The text says he lingered, held back by family, by property, by everything he had built in that city. The messengers seized his hand, his wife's hand, and his two daughters' hands, and dragged them outside the walls. The mercy was physical. It was urgent. There was no time to negotiate with a man who could not yet comprehend that his entire world was about to end. Then the Lord rained upon Sodom and upon Gomorrah brimstone and fire from the Lord out of heaven. The text uses a Hebrew word, gophrith, translated as brimstone, burning sulfur. It describes material falling from the sky, ignited, consuming everything it touched. The cities were overthrown. The entire plain, every living thing, every structure, the vegetation itself was erased from the ground. Lot's wife looked back. The text does not say she turned to salt immediately. It says she looked, and she became a pillar of salt. A woman who could not separate herself from the life she was leaving behind turned one last time toward the inferno, and the destruction consumed her where she stood. Abraham rose early the next morning and went to the place where he had stood before the Lord. He looked down toward Sodom and Gomorrah, toward all the land of the plain. The smoke of the country went up as the smoke of a furnace. Everything he could see, cities, farmland, livestock, people, had become a column of smoke rising into the morning sky. The plain was silent. For over 3,000 years, this account was read as pure theology, a moral parable about hospitality, wickedness, and divine judgment, a cautionary tale. Serious biblical scholars and archaeologists dismiss the search for Sodom as a fool's errand, the kind of project that belonged in Sunday school, not in stratigraphic excavation reports. The cities of the plain, if they had ever existed at all, were assumed to lie beneath the southern Dead Sea, inaccessible and unrecoverable. The Bible was not a geological record. It was faith. It was not archaeology. In 2005, Dr. Stephen Collins began excavating a massive tell in modern-day Jordan, 14 kilometers northeast of the Dead Sea. The site was called Tal el-Hammam. It was enormous, as over 62 acres of fortified Bronze Age city, the largest urban center in the entire southern Jordan Valley during the Middle Bronze Age. Collins was not searching for Sodom when he started. He was following the data. But the data was about to lead him somewhere no mainstream archaeologist expected to go. Everything about Tal el-Hammam matched the biblical geography of Sodom with unsettling precision. Genesis places Sodom in the plain of Jordan, the Kikar, visible from the highlands near Bethel and Ai. The chronology of Abraham and Lot fits squarely in the Middle Bronze Age, 1900 to 1550 BCE. Tal el-Hammam was the dominant fortified city in that exact region during that exact period. It had massive defensive walls, a palace complex, administrative quarters, a four-chambered gate, and at least 10 satellite towns radiating outward across the plain. Precisely what you would expect from the ruling city-state of the Kikar. And then there was the destruction layer. When the excavation team dug down to the Middle Bronze Age stratum, they found something that stopped them cold. A band of ash, charcoal, pulverized mudbrick, and fragments of melted vitrified pottery, 1.5 meters thick, stretching across the entire excavated area. This was not the residue of a military conquest. No ancient army possessed the technology to produce what the team was seeing under their microscopes. The city had not fallen to siege. It had been annihilated by something that did not belong in the Bronze Age. After that destruction, for over 300 years, nobody lived there. Not just at el-Hammam, the entire southern Jordan Valley, nearly 500 square kilometers of fertile, well-watered agricultural land, was abandoned. No settlements, no farming, no evidence of human presence at all. In a region where cities had thrived continuously for 2,000 years, the land went silent for centuries. The ground itself had been rendered uninhabitable. The Hebrew verb for what happened to Sodom is hafak, to overthrow, to overturn, to transform utterly. It is the same word used when Moses threw down his staff and it became a serpent. It describes not gradual decay, but a sudden, irreversible change of state. The cities of the plain were not abandoned. They were not gradually depopulated. They were overthrown. And the archaeological evidence at el-Hammam pointed toward a single, instantaneous, violent event. The question was no longer whether the city was destroyed catastrophically. The question was, by what? In September 2021, 21 scientists published a paper that detonated across the worlds of archaeology and theology. The venue was Scientific Reports, a peer-reviewed journal of the Nature portfolio, not a fringe publication, not a theological journal, but one of the most rigorously vetted scientific platforms in the world. The title left no room for ambiguity. A Tunguska-sized airburst destroyed el-Hammam, a Middle Bronze Age city in the Jordan Valley near the Dead Sea. The team included geologists, geochemists, mineralogists, archaeologists, and impact physicists. This was not speculation. This was a forensic indictment. The team presented 4 categories of evidence, each one independently conclusive. Together, they painted a picture of destruction so extreme that only one known mechanism could account for it: a cosmic airburst, an asteroid or comet fragment that detonated in the atmosphere above the city, releasing energy equivalent to a 12 to 23 megaton nuclear weapon. No impact crater, no surviving meteorite, just a fireball, a shockwave, and annihilation. First, melted construction materials. The team recovered mudbrick fragments that had been heated to temperatures exceeding 1,500 degrees Celsius, far beyond what any ancient fire could produce. Even the most intense urban fires, fed by grain silos, timber beams, and olive oil, reached perhaps 800 to 1,000 degrees at their peak. To vitrify mudbrick, to literally turn clay into glass, requires thermal energy comparable to the surface of molten lava. The city's buildings had not burned. They had been flash melted. Second, shocked quartz. This is the forensic gold standard for high-energy events. When quartz crystals are subjected to pressure exceeding 10 gigapascals, their internal crystalline lattice fractures along specific, identifiable planes that are visible only under a microscope. Shock quartz is the signature of meteor impacts, nuclear detonations, and cosmic airbursts. It does not form in volcanoes. It does not form in earthquakes. It does not form in house fires. The destruction layer at el-Hammam is full of it. Third, spherules. The team recovered thousands of microscopic spherules, composed of melted iron, silica, and trace metals, embedded throughout the destruction stratum. These form through a specific process. A massive explosion vaporizes surface material, hurls it into the atmosphere at supersonic speeds, and the molten droplets cool rapidly during flight, condensing into tiny perfect spheres before raining back to the Earth. The chemical composition of the el-Hammam spherules matched the local soil chemistry exactly. The explosion did not deliver foreign material. It vaporized the ground itself. Fourth, the salt event. The destruction layer contains anomalously high concentrations of sodium chloride, potassium chloride, and calcium sulfate, salts that are absent from the archaeological layers above and below. The Dead Sea, which at the time extended closer to el-Hammam, appears to have been flash vaporized by the thermal pulse. Superheated salt-saturated steam was driven across the landscape by the shock wave, then condensed and settled as a toxic crust. This crust poisoned the soil so thoroughly that agriculture became impossible for over 300 years. The land was not just burned, it was salted. The explosion was roughly equivalent to the 1908 Tunguska event that flattened 2,000 square kilometers of Siberian forest. A cosmic object, probably a stony asteroid fragment roughly 60 meters across, entered Earth's atmosphere at hypersonic velocity. At approximately 2 to 5 kilometers above the ground, the immense atmospheric pressure overwhelmed the structural integrity of the object, and it disintegrated in a single catastrophic release of energy. No impact crater formed because the object never touched the ground. Instead, a thermal pulse hotter than the surface of the sun radiated downward, and a shock wave traveling at over 1,000 kilometers per hour followed milliseconds behind. Everything beneath the blast was vaporized, carbonized, or flattened in the span of a human heartbeat. An airburst produces a blinding flash, brighter than the sun for a fraction of a second, followed by a visibly approaching shock wave. If you are standing on a hillside looking back toward the city, you see the light first. Then you see the wall of destruction racing toward you. The Genesis account records the messenger's warning with specificity. Do not look behind you. Do not stop anywhere in the valley. Escape to the mountains. Those who turned to look, who could not resist the impulse to witness what was happening, would have stared directly into the thermal pulse. They would have been the first to die. She became a pillar of salt. The Hebrew phrase has puzzled readers for millennia, but when you overlay the scientific evidence, it describes something disturbingly specific. A human body caught in the open by a thermal pulse of over 2,000 degrees Celsius would be carbonized near instantly. Flesh, bone, and fabric reduced to a charred silhouette. Then in the minutes and hours following the blast, the salt-laden fallout cloud, vaporized Dead Sea brine condensed and precipitated by the explosion, would have settled across the entire plain. The carbonized remains of anyone who looked back would have been coated in a thick, white crystalline crust. A pillar of salt is precisely what an eyewitness would have described, because a pillar of salt is precisely what the science predicts. The brimstone, burning sulfur raining from the heavens, matches the chemistry of an airburst over the Dead Sea Basin with forensic precision. The Dead Sea region contains enormous natural deposits of sulfur, bitumen, and petroleum-rich shales. When the thermal pulse struck the surface, it ignited these materials instantly, launching burning debris, literal fireballs of flaming sulfur and hydrocarbon, high into the atmosphere. These would have arced across the sky and fallen onto cities and fields across the entire plain. To a Bronze Age observer, there was only one way to describe it: fire and brimstone raining from heaven. And they were not wrong. They simply did not possess the word airburst. Even the geography of Genesis 14 and 19 aligns with the tall el-Hammam evidence, with a specificity that no alternative candidate has ever matched. The cities of the plain, Sodom, Gomorrah, Admah, Zeboim, and Zoar, are described as a visible cluster, within sight of each other from the highlands. Tall el-Hammam is surrounded by at least 10 smaller Middle Bronze Age settlements that were all simultaneously destroyed in the same catastrophic event at the same radiocarbon date. The eastern edge of the Kikar, where Lot fled, rises toward the mountains of Moab, the exact route the Genesis account describes. The pieces fit. It changes everything. For over a century, biblical archaeology operated on the assumption that Genesis narratives like Sodom were ideological myths, stories invented to explain landscape features or to encode moral instruction. They were not history, they were literature. But if a Bronze Age city in exactly the right place, at exactly the right time, was destroyed by exactly the kind of cataclysm the Bible describes, and if the physical evidence for that cataclysm is measurable, repeatable, and has survived peer review, then the ground has shifted. The operating assumption was wrong. In July 2025, Scientific Reports formally retracted the 2021 paper. The retraction was not based on new evidence disproving the airburst hypothesis. It centered on methodology disputes, whether the mineralogical evidence was sufficiently definitive to rule out alternative explanations, including the possibility of an extraordinarily intense but conventional urban fire. The retraction ignited a firestorm. Skeptics declared the airburst theory dead. Believers in the biblical account pointed to the retraction as proof that the scientific establishment could not tolerate findings that appeared to validate Scripture. But a 2024 follow-up study by Sylvia and colleagues, published through Science Open, presented expanded modeling and additional mineralogical data that reinforced the airburst hypothesis with greater precision. The debate is not settled, it is accelerating. With new papers, new analytical techniques, and new pressure on both sides to account for the full body of evidence. The retraction did not make the evidence disappear. The melted bricks still exist. The shocked quartz is still there, its crystal lattice permanently scarred. The salt layer is still measurable. The forensic evidence does not care about the politics of scientific publishing. The question is no longer whether el-Hammam was destroyed by an extraordinary thermal event. The physical evidence for that is overwhelming and multidisciplinary. The question is whether the scientific community is willing to accept the implications of what the evidence is telling them. And the implications are this. The Genesis account of Sodom's destruction may preserve the oldest eyewitness report of a cosmic catastrophe in human history, passed from survivors to descendants to scribes to scripture, waiting 36 centuries for the tools of modern science to catch up to what the ancient writers already knew. A city that stood for 2 millennia vanished in less than a second. The ground beneath it was poisoned so thoroughly that it remained barren for over 300 years. The survivors fled eastward into the mountains and never returned to the valley they had called home. They told their children what they had seen: fire from the sky, the earth itself burning, a column of smoke that rose for days. And those children told their children, and their children told theirs, until a scribe in ancient Israel wrote it down. Not as a myth, not as a parable, but as history. The Bible described it first. Now the earth has confirmed it. The science and the scripture are not in conflict here. They are telling the same story in different languages, one with the precision of a mass spectrometer, the other with the memory of a survivor. The fire that destroyed Sodom was real. We have found its fingerprints in the glass, in the quartz, in the salt, in the ash, in the microscopic spheres that fell from the sky and buried a civilization. And the story is still speaking. If this is the kind of story you've been looking for, the history behind the history, then you're in the right place. This is Echoes of Antiquity Untold. Hit subscribe so you don't miss the next one. I'll see you in the caves.